Hi, my name is Kate, this is my channel, and this is going to be a book review for Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the first book that I've read in 2021. It was a 5-star read, and it's got me feeling like I'm going to be in a good place for 2021 when the first book was this good. So this book was originally published in 2015, and it is a science fiction novel with some space opera elements. So basic rundown of the plot is it's two parallel stories. One that is about a human spaceship that they are referring to as an ark. It is called Gilgamesh. In the far of human future, has escaped Earth because Earth has been destroyed by many generations ago and is gotten to the point where it is now completely uninhabitable. And they've got the technology where they put everyone into deep sleep, and they can travel for thousands of years to try and find somewhere else that they can live. On this ship, we jump into this ship at several points along their journey where our main character, Holston, is coming in and out of his deep sleep. He's brought out of his deep sleep to do something. Once it's done, he goes back into his deep sleep. And this can be thousands or hundreds of years in between his awakenings, and it's sort of watching how it's like a generation ship story, essentially, of how this generation ship and how this society changes over the course of this journey, even though people aren't awake for all of it. So people were asleep for thousands of years, they wake up, they do something, they go back to sleep, and then they wake up again after 100 years or so, do something. Some people go to sleep and some people stay awake and continue on with society, especially because the ship is starting to break down. So not everyone can go to sleep because people have to be awake to maintain it. And it's sort of watching them travel through and try and solve various problems. The second timeline, or the second story, is quite different. This one is told from the point of view of an inhabited planet. And this planet is inhabited by sentient, intelligent spiders, and it's about their becoming sentient and becoming a society, and it's told over the length of their society until these two stories kind of come together and the ark arrives at the alien spider planet. And the spider story is, again, it's told almost episodically, but it's not because spiders are going in and out of sleep. It's because it's about the evolution of the spiders and their society and the turning points in their development. And so it's like every couple of generations or every few hundred years, you jump back to see this. You jump back to the important points in the spiders, and you get their points of view. The stories are told parallel, but each time you come back to the spiders, you get a new group of characters, and every time you come back to the humans, you get the same character because he's returning, going in and out of sleep over thousands of years. You get the spiders happening that's over thousands of years at the same time, but we're jumping in the timeline rather than the characters jumping in the timeline, if that makes sense. That's the story. Though the spiders become sentient because in the humans' far past, before the planet became uninhabitable, a group of humans did travel there, and they did an experiment where they launched basically a virus that contained like an evolutionary cheat onto the planet with some monkeys, and they thought, and terraforming. So they thought that the monkeys would catch the virus, and then when they checked back in a few thousand years, the monkeys would be sentient and would have developed society. The monkeys burned up on entry into the onto the planet, but the virus survived, and there were spiders, and the virus adapted to the spiders, and that's why we get them. So there's a bit of communication with the remaining orbiting human satellite that's monitoring the planet, and the spiders learn that it's there and are trying to figure it out. So that's the general plot, which took quite a while to explain, actually. I was fascinated by this book. It was very well written, very well written. It was compelling throughout. I feel like it was action-packed as well. I feel like it would make a very good television program. Just the way that the human character is launched into action every time, and you've got to come in every time and figure out what's happening, and then you can revert back to the spiders and see that changing, and you get the human drama, and you get this like watching how is this going to go, and then when they come together, there's lots of miscommunication and lots of misunderstanding, and that could be really, really done well. And I think it makes a really great story structure as a book and as potentially a TV show. The way that it's almost, the human story is almost a stranger in a strange land repeatedly. You keep coming back, and every time he comes back, he's got to figure out what's happening, especially if he comes back and he knows that you come back straight away, you're like, oh my God, these people have been awake for several generations. I've got to figure out what's going on. They've developed their own culture, or he's woken up because there's a coup. There's a coup happening, and he's got to figure out what are the sides, and what side should I be on. Not that he gets much choice, because he's often kidnapped back and forth between them. This main character is an historian, so he speaks what they call Old Empire, which is the language that I assume I'm speaking now. It's a contemporary modern language, and for them it's very old, ye olde English, medieval French or something, Latin perhaps. Like the language is that old at this point, but he speaks it and he understands the history. So they're going to try and find a human base on a planet that had been terraformed and they presume abandoned. So they need to have a historian there who can read the manuals, understand the technology, and kind of might have an idea of what would have happened in this place. So he's quite a valuable person because he's the only one on the planet, on the Ark, who has the language skills advanced enough to do this job. So people want him if they're doing a coup. Because we're also looking at it from the point of view of a historian, I think that makes the way the spider story is told really interesting, because you can see their episodic there is historical. And we're looking back on human society, on the fall of human society, the destruction of self-inflicted destruction of human society by humans. And we're looking back on that. And with the spiders, we're looking at it in the present, but we're looking at the rise and the success of this society as it's happening. And because it's so successful, we're projecting what it's going to be like. So having those a backwards look at a fall and a forwards look at a rise happening at the same time is really quite clever. And we are able to see as well the different choices that these two societies have made, these two species have made as a species, as a culture, looking at how those different choices has resulted in a very different kind of society, and how the way that our brains are formatted allow those choices to happen. For example, the spiders think in terms of networks because of their webs. They think because they've got their network, they think about things branching off in multiple different directions at the same time. And they also know that their actions are going to reverberate through the web. They think about vibrations as they have a speech that's a large part of it is vibration and tapping on their web to communicate, and the other spiders feel the vibrations. So they know that their impact vibrate through the network, and it has an effect on everybody around them. in all directions, because that's how a web works, so that's how their brain works, so that's how their culture works. And so it's a very different point of view, even though they've got gender gender issues as well. And it's reversed. The female spider is the dominant spider. They're bigger, they're stronger, and as we know from spiders on Earth, sometimes mating means that the male spider is killed and eaten after mating, and it's interesting to see how that develops and how there's like suffrage for male spiders, essentially, to be like, hey, you got to stop doing it, that's not cool. So it's not that spiders are so much more advanced than us. They have very similar problems, but because their perspective is so different, they find different solutions, so the culture develops very differently, and it's really interesting to see when they come together how that happens. At the end, it was, I had 30 pages before the end, and I'm like, how is this going to finish? I hadn't seen it, and I should have. Once I got there, I'm like, well, of course that's what they did. Of course that's what's happening here. But it kept me guessing, and it was action filled, and I didn't see the ending coming, and I found that really satisfying. And I really like to read another book. There is a second book, but I don't know if it's a direct sequel. I have the feeling that it's more like a companion novel. It's called Children of Ruin. So I'm not sure if it's a direct sequel or not. I have the feeling it's a companion novel. Now, the second book only came out in 2019. This one came out in 2015. So I can't imagine having finished this book and then having to wait 4 years for a sequel. I'm so glad I waited, because I have been hearing about it for quite some time, and I'm really pleased that I read it, and I really do recommend it. I think it's fabulous, and I'd love to hear anyone else's thoughts about it. So I'm Kate, this is my channel, and this has been my review of Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Thanks.